Well, I had already intended for the next episode to be on awakening to the light and the dark, the dual awakening process. And whew, I've been feeling this crescendo of energy, and disclosure truly is here. It is fully upon us now. There is a tidal wave of disclosure incoming. So it feels extra aligned and timely and important to really address this subject, because without the anchor in the higher truth of the light, what is coming through disclosure is going to be really challenging for many people to grapple with. So, welcome back to the Heart of Truth. We're going to get into some real deep truth today. At the same time, this is going to be more of a toe dip into a broad range of the different subjects and arenas that are going to be exposed. And we're going to get deeper as we go forward. But I want people to be really anchored and grounded in what is happening in the world right now, and why, even though it might look completely chaotic and outright awful, according to many people, why this is ultimately a necessary step for humanity and why it is ultimately a good thing. It's the breakdown before the breakthrough, spoiler alert. But we're going to get into that in a little bit more depth. So, wow, so much has been coming out of late, and this is through the Doge, which is highly controversial, but the Doge agenda to reveal the waste and corruption in government, which in my humble opinion is why this is a necessary step. Because if we kept moving forward on the trajectory we were, things were only going to get worse, more corrupt, more fraud, more waste. This has been going on for years. It is systemic. A lot of people have recognized it, and yet, as somebody who started to see this a number of years ago, it's still shocking to me to see these numbers and to see what they were going toward. And it's very clear to most that a lot of these programs are not real programs. It's a whole laundering situation. They're washing it, right? So why are we fighting for the corruption? This is part of what we're going to get into. Why, and I say we globally, right? Why is so much of humanity, so much of the country, why are they still so adamantly opposed to seeing the corruption? So, this is something that I find really fascinating from the perspective of social psychology. But beyond Doge, we've got Diddy, we've got Epstein, we've got Candace Owens, doing this big reveal on the president of France and his quote unquote wife. There's a whole deep controversy there. I will let you explore that if you want to get into it. Jimmy Savile has recently come out. They've done documentaries on this. So we're touching on a lot of sexual perversion and distortion among the elite, celebrity, star class, if you will. The people who are controlling reality and our perception of reality, who are influencing culture, a lot of them have been really deeply involved in some really dark stuff, some really, oh gosh, disturbing stuff. Disturbing is probably the best word for it. And we are here to remember our divinity. So, how do these two come together, right? So, this is why I really endeavor to anchor in to the light of truth as we move through this process, because awakening is not just about love and light. That is a huge core theme of this podcast as a whole, the heart of truth. You've got to really dig in and work through those layers of muck and grit. And, it's like literally if you were digging for buried treasure, you have to dig through the mud. It's like that lotus coming up from the mud to bloom as well. We can look at this from so many different analogies. And in order to get to that higher self version, that heaven on earth reality that so many talk about and envision in the spiritual communities, how do we actually get there? This is where a lot of people, in my opinion, but also based on experience, this is where a lot of people go wrong on the journey, is they get caught in these false ascension, new age distortions of bypassing. It's literal bypassing of the actual alchemical process that is necessary to go through. It's that compression of the coal to make the diamond is a perfect analogy, as well as the butterfly emerging from the cocoon. A lot of people don't realize or consider the fact that the caterpillar literally has to turn to goo first, be completely remolded and reformed. And then even once that happens, it then has to break out of the cocoon, which isn't an easy process in itself. And it's like the phoenix has to be burned before it can rise up again with its golden wings, is how I always envision a phoenix with golden wings. And perhaps that symbol of alchemy coming through, but it's got to go through that process of transmutation and transformation. That purification through the flames is not comfortable, right? So this is what collectively we are about to experience. People who have been on an earlier wave of awakening, many of us have gone through this experience, but also remember that there are different waves. There are multiple deaths and rebirths on the process, and I would like to remind you that it's so worth it. The whole journey, as uncomfortable as it may be, is so worth it. So when it comes to disclosure, I would like to just ask you this question. Would you rather hear an uncomfortable truth or keep being fed the comfortable lies? So this is really about operating in truth or illusion, the 5D reality or the matrix reality, right? So we are here to transcend the illusion, to end the trance ending. And part of that is really detaching from what we thought was true. And that's a really uncomfortable process for most people to go through. Most people are still operating in denial because, frankly, the harshness of the truth of our distorted reality is just a little bit too much to handle, or a lot of it, way too much to handle, because it's really dark. Those of us who are very sensitive have intuitively known this our entire lives. Things have always felt a little off or wrong about our world. Harsh is a perfect word. So there was an aspect of us that always knew this down to the core of our being. So perhaps that sensitivity, which also opened us up to the magic and the beauty and the awe of the world, because we had this sense of connection to that sacredness, that divinity that we see in nature around us, the beauty in the sunset and the mountain and the tree, right? The simple things in life. And we see that as a reflection of us on some unconscious visceral level, perhaps, until we actually go on this journey and begin to awaken and remember and relearn these truths about ourselves and our reality. Until we get to that point, it's largely an unconscious process. I know for me it was. And then I really fully awakened. And once I learned the dark truths of our reality, it kind of just felt like an of course. You know, when I was in college, I was supposed to be, I went in biology pre-med. I was supposed to be a doctor. And I sat with that and I got really bored, honestly, and learning biology for the fourth time. I should have taken a more advanced course, honestly. But that was the protocol. You do that course because otherwise I might not have been able to handle it. Well, I took bad advice, basically. And I was really sitting with it though. I hated chem lab. I hated blood. And then I was like, what am I doing? But the thought that came to me that really stuck with me is that working as a doctor with a white lab coat in a hospital felt too sterile to me. Now, this is not to knock the many doctors who do very wonderful work saving lives. And I want to be really clear, because people often take one thing you say and they make it into this entirely broad generalization. I have never been a proponent of doing away with emergency medical care, obviously. That is necessary. Those advances are tremendous. We have so many life-saving procedures that I would never say we should do away with, get rid of. I was trying to say both of those phrases at the same time. I would never say to do away with emergency medicine. I would never say to do away with emergency intervention of any kind. I would never say to do away with, the very necessary prenatal care that often happens. Even there are so many women with the best of intentions on this path, once they awaken and they want to be a holistic mama, and things happen. Things still happen, and they need to go to the hospital to save both baby and mama in some cases. They have the best of intentions to do a natural birth, which I think is beautiful. And the fact that we have the medical care available to us to save their lives, oh, I'm just in awe sometimes of what is possible. Surgery on tiny infants. This is a thing that we need. I would never ever say that we should not celebrate that. But when it comes to chronic care, when it comes to chronic disease, we are failing miserably. And I don't know how anybody could argue that. Just looking at the statistics, the United States spends more per capita by far than anywhere else in the world on pharma. And we have some of the worst health outcomes for I don't remember the term that they use now, for a developed first world country. Those might not be the politically correct terms right now, but you know what I mean. I'm not really here for political correctness either, am I? So we all know what I mean by that. We are far, far behind as a country. We have like rampant obesity, diabetes, autoimmune conditions, allergies. I don't have the numbers in front of me, otherwise I would give them. I just wrote them down the other day. And actually, I have been compiling a document of all these resources that I have found helpful and just open my eyes to certain aspects of our reality, and also sharing opinions, but also books, like other opinions that are not mine, that shed light into different fields, for example. So, this era of disclosure is very much aligned with Pluto in Aquarius. And I just opened YouTube this morning, and there was this woman I had never seen or heard of before, right at the top in the center. And her name is Sabine something or other. She's a physicist. This video, posted a day or two ago, had well over 1 million views already. I was like, whoa, what has she got to say? And it's something like a leading headline. I didn't know who she was. I didn't know she was a physicist. So I tuned in, and she was sharing, something about, this was meant to be confidential. And it was an email that she kept anonymous, of course. An email she received after publishing this article, basically calling her colleagues in physics, calling them out, calling them up, just saying the facts for what they were, that they're operating in a bubble. And the response was so telling, because it was basically saying, well, we won't get the funding if we don't go along with this status quo. We have to be within the status quo. And what will happen to all the scientists that have families if we go against the status quo? We'll lose our funding. And so basically there was a blatant admission that what they were doing was wrong. This person had very, very clear words for it. Blatant admission of things being really corrupt. It was an outright admission of corruption, that many idiots were working on idiotic projects that were clearly not based in fact or reality, that the theories were rooted in nonsense. Straight up admission. And he was saying, but how can we do away with this? Because we need to feed our families. We need the government to keep funding us. We need the government to keep funding the projects. Well, guess where the government funding comes from? It comes from taxpayers. Taxpayers are paying for these bunk projects, for bunk science. And we're told to trust the science. We're told to believe the science. So, once you start to put the pieces of the puzzle together, you begin to get a picture of full systemic corruption. And this is when things begin to get really interesting. But if you're operating in denial, if your ego is still very much rooted in the system, for example, it's going to be very challenging to confront that reality. It's going to be very challenging to confront the fact that you may have been lied to for years, if not your entire life, that you have bought into the lies. There's a huge layer of denial that will come into that, especially those who are highly educated and intellectual, especially the PhDs who have their egos very rooted in their intellectual achievements. But what if all of the data that they're working with is skewed and biased and operating within a bubble? What if the models themselves are inherently not fitting our reality because we live in a quantum reality and most of the models are rooted in Newtonian physics? And it's not just physics. I read the comment section. And there are many people who were in medicine, who were in biology and different, and finance even, all different arenas. People were chiming in and saying, yes, we were told the models were nonsense, but that we have to keep working with them. Yes, thank you for calling this out, because everything, I had to leave the industry. I had to leave academia. I said it in one of my previous episodes. I think it was The Belly of the Beast of the Cancer Diagnosis System, that the ivory towers come with a lot of red tape. And this is just it. Who funds the publishers, the academic journals where these studies get published? Who funds the actual research itself? A lot of it is coming from pharma. A lot of it is coming from institutions with very real agendas and bias. So we like to think science is unbiased. We like to think the media is unbiased, that it is reporting the news, that journalism is about sharing the truth. Unfortunately, anybody who's been paying attention knows that that is not the reality that we are operating in. The news itself is not just biased. At this point, it is largely pure propaganda. There is always a spin. Once you zoom out, and you can just tell reading the headline that they're already manipulating you, manipulating your perception of what the situation is. They're inserting this level of opinion. They're inserting this level of interpretation. They're telling you what to believe about the situation rather than reporting straight word for word fact. They're taking clips out of context and creating this perception of individuals. They are taking many things out of context, even if they show you what they say. They're only taking out like 20 seconds or 5 seconds for that matter, rather than showing you the 20 minutes. So who do we believe? Who do we trust? This is where we get into awakening to the light, awakening to the heart of truth that lies within, awakening to the divinity within our reality. So once we begin to actually embrace the fact that there is something beyond us, that there is a consciousness that is working through us and flowing through us and guiding us, truly guiding us, that this is what is guiding our intuition, that this is what is allowing us to have this sense of sacredness. Think about it. Yeah, I just had 5 thoughts flow through my brain all at one time. But everything is energy, right? A lot of people still think that the idea of energy and frequency and vibration is woo. It's mystical woo nonsense. Your crystals and astrology, haha. But and bless your hearts. Bless your hearts if you believe that. But once you understand that literally everything is energy, it's impossible not to recognize it, but also the lack of awareness of for lack of a better word, the lack of awareness of the hypocrisy in not believing in energy, frequency, and vibration, but you believe in a Wi-Fi that operates everything. You believe in microwaves, you believe in X-rays, right? Why is it so big of a jump to believe that we are energy? And when you think about ATP molecules in our cells, when you think about the fact that the heart itself is a pump, it is way more than a pump, by the way. It is a portal, it is a treasure chest, but it is a pump. And our muscles, they pump blood, they use energy and electricity in our body. And we have, the proton, um, what's the thing? I just blanked out. The proton pump in our cells. We need that polarity in our body to function. Water molecules, positive and negative polarity allows for all the properties of water molecules. Everything is energy fundamentally. Why it's so hard for people to take that leap is because they've been conditioned to believe that it is woo-woo, it is nonsense, because we've been fed this narrative. And this gets me back into the system of why we've been so separated from ourselves, from nature. It has been, and this is what a lot of people are going to have some trouble with. It's been very deliberate. There has been a deliberate effort to separate us from these higher truths, to separate us from our hearts, from our souls, from the beautiful reality that is available to us. And this is done from birth, coming into, as much as I appreciate the hospitals, consider the fluorescent bright lights and the sterile rooms and how there's no plants or nature in most hospitals. They're concrete blocks. And then the kids go to school, and the schools these days look like prisons. They're soulless blocks of concrete. And this really gets me into thinking about architecture and how old architecture is filled with beauty and awe. Those giant cathedrals just filled with all this detail and utterly awe-inspiring. It really does something to your soul. It sparks your soul when you walk into majestic rooms, or you're out in the majesty of nature itself on a high mountain, or looking out over the expanse of the ocean, looking up at the stars at night. There is something that gets sparked within us if we allow ourselves to actually tune in, if we allow ourselves to feel that connection. What is that spark? Where does that spark come from? It is the spark of life itself. And that to me is consciousness. That to me, that spark, that is frequency, that is energy, that is the spark, that is the soul. That is the soul. Woo. That is the soul enlivening. That is the soul being brought up to the surface to allow it to fill the vessel of this body temple with its essence. That is our sense of aliveness coming back to life after being suppressed for so long. And so we're living in realities of cubicles and fluorescent lights, completely separated from nature. The concrete jungle has replaced the lush vegetative jungle. And, we've got just this completely distorted, inverted reality that really, I think, suppresses the soul at a fundamental level. And the more sensitive saw it earlier, the more sensitive amongst us, we literally feel it at a visceral level. And that sensitivity was often made out to be something to be ashamed of, or a weakness. So a lot of us, dealt with trauma or the suppression of our voices for that reason as well. But I would also argue that everybody has that spark, regardless of level of sensitivity, and that if people are quote unquote less sensitive, it's actually due not to the fact that they don't have the capacity to feel, because it's really the root of emotion as well. We all have the capacity to feel emotion, but it's due to trauma. And not just trauma, toxicity that prevents us from really being able to feel that aliveness. And when I talk about toxicity, I very much do mean at a physical environmental level. I very much do mean the toxicity of the chemicals in our food, the heavy metals in our air and in the vaccines. I very much mean the pesticides, the herbicides, the antibiotics that they inject into food that people then eat. And then, yes, the stressors of the environment really serve to create an environment of toxicity. If you have relationships that are not in the highest alignment, that creates another level of toxicity, of suppression of our life force energy. But it's also parasites. I think parasites are a much more pervasive problem than we have been allowed to perceive. A lot of people are talking about heavy metals, number one, but also parasites. So yes, I mean those disgusting organs, sorry, those disgusting organisms that nobody probably wants to consider reside within their own body. And this is a very real reality that most of us have to face. Do a parasite cleanse. So when I talk about taking care of the body temple, I very much do mean at the most fundamental level possible of clearing out the body vessel. It's 222 I just saw out of the corner of my eye. And that is about self-love, actually, as well. That is about divine love, self-love, all forms of love. So it's that holy trinity aspect of inner union and wholeness coming through, as well as I talk about the body temple. So bringing your body into that frequency based on emotion, energy in motion, of love and above, of gratitude, of wholeness, of joy. Do you have joy in your life? But also the layer of the physical toxicity, because if you contain physical toxicity, if you have parasites that are leeching off your food sources, your energy source, your fundamental sources of energy, you will feel tired all the time. It's going to be that much harder to experience joy, to experience the fullness and aliveness of your being. So this is a very real reality that we must embrace. And it's really about loving ourselves back to life. Do you love yourself enough to do what it takes to become the best version of yourself? And sometimes that means doing a physical detox. I see a lot of people in the spiritual world have dived into the meditation and the chakras and the energy and the Reiki, and that's all wonderful and beautiful. But, sometimes I will see posts of people saying, oh, I'm experiencing this pain and I don't know, I can't seem to figure out the chakra thing. And I'm like, have you actually done a detox ever? Maybe it's worth considering the physical layer as well. Are you working out? Are you moving your body? This to me has to be the foundation of everything that we do in this physical vessel. In everything we do on this spiritual journey occurs within the physical vessel. So are you taking care of it in those very fundamental ways? Do you have the essentials in place? Not from a space of judgment, but because there has been no roadmap and people don't know that, part of the spiritual curriculum, really the fundamental foundation should begin with the body. And we're working at it backwards in a lot of cases, diving into the deep end head first with the activations and whatnot. So that, I want to keep this more grounded in the tangible aspects of awakening to the light and the dark, right? And disclosure. But I really honestly feel that to stay anchored and to be able to have the capacity to confront a lot of the darkness that is going to be coming through, because I don't think people realize the level of evil that is going to be disclosed going forward. I don't think a lot of people have any idea what is coming. And I think the more rooted and grounded we are in our physical vessel, the more we're going to have the space, the capacity, the nervous system capacity as well, crucially, to handle it. So clear out your vessel, get grounded in your body to the point of doing the somatic work. This level of fundamentals is what I am talking about. So awakening to the dark aspects of reality is about recognizing that virtually every aspect of our modern world has been designed to shut down and dim this light, to disconnect us from the sacred body temples, through the toxicity, through the pollution, through the toxic, corrupted food system, medical system, the air that we breathe, but everything that we consume in our TVs, the programming of the televisions, lie vision, putting that vision into our consciousness. The movies, the music, a lot of them have frequency distortions. You would be shocked at some of the patents that are out there and some of the studies that they have done. MK Ultra is going to be disclosed more and more. These things are real, and it's really not easy to confront that a lot of the systems that we thought were in support of the population to help us thrive have actually, in many cases, not just been corrupt, but actively been pursuing the opposite agenda, actively been pursuing the control and enslavement of our minds. So if our minds are enslaved, every aspect of ourselves are enslaved. And it gets much darker than that, believe it or not. So this is what I'm going to get into going forward. Again, I said at the beginning, I wanted to kind of do a toe dip episode with this one, because I want people to be really grounded in the light of truth, but to also be prepared for what's coming. I will also, in some upcoming episodes, get into politics and spiritual warfare more directly, getting deeper into the political sphere. A lot of people don't understand why a spiritual person would talk about politics and care. And I'm like, well, that's because politics is a primary form of placing spiritual warfare and perpetuating spiritual warfare on the population. It's the primary means through which it is operated, so it is conducted. And I also believe that we are here to reform the systems from within, and many of them need to be dismantled. And I'm going to talk about spiritual narcissism and bypassing, and getting a little deeper into the darker layers, as well as a lot of the magic and soul travel and the expansion that comes through. And yes, more interviews and discussions about the different layers that we embrace on this journey and that we experience. So there's going to be both, because this is truth. It's not light only, it's not dark only, which a lot of people can get sucked into that black pill energy. In my Awakening Fundamentals course, I actually go deeper into this awakening to the light and the dark aspects, and there's a bunch of other modules to help you get really grounded and anchored in what is spirituality, what is awakening, what is this journey all about, what is happening in the world. It's a primer. It goes well with my book as well. My book explains a lot of this as well, and it gives you tools. I also have my body temple blueprint, which offers these tools for detoxing and the essential foundational fundamentals to support the body temple. So level 1 is the basics. This has nothing to do with spirituality, honestly. You begin to connect with your body as sacred, but body temple level 1 is kind of fundamental. How do you take care of your vessel and keep it healthy? And I think that this has to be the foundation of all work that we do. And granted, people will have their different experiences that they came here to experience in this lifetime. But, I just want to get back into the medical system and the gaslighting, because, we have been so disconnected from our bodies. And one of the biggest psyops, I believe, was the enforcement, or the threatened enforcement in most cases, but in some cases, people lost their jobs for not taking the COVID injection. It's not even accurate to really call it a vaccine, because it is a different technology that they put under the vaccine label so that it would be qualified under the 1968 vaccine. No, sorry, not 1968. I switched the numbers. 1986 Vaccine Protection Act. Who was protected, though? It was the pharmaceutical companies. the vaccine manufacturers were who was protected by that. So they called it that for a reason. And there have been a lot of horrific side effects that have happened. Effects, really, they're not side effects. But look at that, for example. And a lot of people still don't understand that this was a psychological operation as much as anything else, because it shut down the world. There is a lot that went on with that, but this has been a targeting of the physical body temple, a direct targeting of the sacredness to keep us separated from that divinity. So, it's like the ones that are exerting the most influence over the world, there is a perversion, there is some kind of distortion operating their consciousness. And then it trickles down through the media and the propaganda and the enforced narratives and the repetition. Repeat it over and over and over again. And you just saturate people with this singular message, then they're going to start to believe it. But what do we typically call any leader that suppresses the voices of the opposition, that censors the opposition? We usually call them a dictator. What many people don't realize is the level of censorship and suppression of the opposition that actually occurred during COVID. So, what then would the Biden administration qualify as? A Democratic leader? I think not. I myself was really shocked when, and I knew how bad things were. I knew that many people were getting deplatformed and censored left and right. I knew how bad it was. I could see through the agenda at that point, and I had already connected so many dots. But I myself, this past fall, was speaking with somebody who escaped Eastern Europe in the late 1980s. And I was shocked when she told me that she thought America was worse than the communist regime she had escaped from. I was shocked. And I think that alone should really tell us that things have been far worse than even many of us have perceived. And I always have assumed some pretty bad stuff myself about the way things are operated, but to see the facts laid out, it's still like, whoa. So for people who haven't seen this, I know it's going to be a serious shock to the system. So we've gotten to the point where the deception has gone so deep as well that they've deceived humans to believe that these chemicals are safe, that people are literally willing to poison themselves through food, like, the fast food, the awful Doritos and Lucky Charms and things like that, that are just pure chemicals. People are poisoning themselves through that. People don't realize that. It's also the normalization of binge drinking, the constant, centering of social situations around alcohol. And then, of course, the normalization of chemicals and heavy metals to keep our bodies, quote unquote, healthy. Once you start to look at this and see it for what it is, it's shocking, but it's also just like, wow. And of course, this is how we got here, because the people who have been in control, the elites, quote unquote, ruling the world, they have had this perversion of consciousness that is controlling our reality. And there's a few different layers to that, but we're here to break free from that programming, to break free from this inverted system. We are here to break the system, to dismantle it, to dissolve the mental matrix back into love, is the best way that I like to look at it. And in order to do that, we've got to have awareness first off, and we've got to be able to confront these darker truths of our reality. So the next episode I'm going to share is one that I recorded a couple years ago, is the courage to confront evil. So once we have the capacity to face it, only then can we truly heal it. And again, I want to reiterate that beginning with the body temple, I personally believe is so foundational to doing this work. And you don't have to wait to start to do the emotional and mindset work to begin to grapple with this, to do that nervous system regulation. Please, don't delay in doing the deeper research and whatnot. But at the same time, start drinking your lemon water. Consider a 3-day cleanse. I have a guide for that, a free one. And then, of course, the Body Temple Blueprint that I offer includes everything. And I will be doing a level 2, which is about anchoring in more strengthened energetic protection and really ramping up those layers of defense and understanding the energy body, understanding the chakras and the spine, because this has been left out of our curriculum. Most of us have to relearn everything about ourselves and our reality. And this is exactly what I have been doing. I have been relearning, unlearning, and relearning everything about myself, about reality. And now I have created a whole school and a whole system and a whole process. So it's not just willy-nilly videos up in there. There's a system, there is a process, and you can very much do it DIY. But this is why I've been guided on the journey that I have, is to see the gaps that were missing, because there were some serious gaps that left me kind of in energetic shambles at various points in my journey. I'm not gonna lie. And I'm like, oh my God, if only I had had that tool or had this roadmap, things would have been so much smoother. I also have fully embraced that my journey has gone as it has, so that I could learn this lesson and bring it toward it's all for a bigger purpose. It's all divinely guided. So I'm not like in regret over it or anything like that. But I want to be able to help people move through the process more seamlessly and to understand the bigger picture, as well as how to navigate it more step by step. And that's why my book is structured the way it is. My book, Let There Be Light, the last episode is about it. And you can just go on Amazon and grab it. But anyway, there is so much more. I think I'm going to wrap this episode up here because there are more episodes coming down the line. And yes, we're going to talk about all the magic. And anybody watching the video sees that my background is just pure sparkly magic. And there's a star, the North Star, we could call it. I was actually going to put up the same background as my podcast itself, the branding, and it wasn't in there anymore. So I uploaded one and I found this one first. And I was like, sparkly to balance the heaviness of the topic, the subject. So yeah, it's about integration. It's about wholeness. We can't have the light without the dark. And we're also at the same time here to integrate the darkness into the light to make it that more whole, full spectrum of rainbow light. This is how I like to look at it. Empty light versus the brilliantly reflecting rainbow light of the aurora, the kind of candy floss aurora, that light, iridescent, sparkly essence flowing, shining through, or the light reflecting off an infinitely faceted diamond. This is the brilliance that awaits us. This is the brilliance that resides within us. Truly, we are crystalline at our core. And it's all this toxicity that keeps us in this very dense experience of reality. And so we are here to transcend it. We are here to transform it. And this very much, again, I can't reiterate enough how much this begins in the body. And we've then got to work through the mental matrix aspects. So there's a lot to it. And what I've done is really do my best to systematize it. And there's going to be so much more coming on the podcast itself. So if you are still here with me, thank you so much for tuning in and being on this journey and for being open-minded and curious and willing, really willing to see what this is all about, to understand what this is all about, and to take the steps forward for yourself. So I will drop the links below for my book and my school, where you can access the Awakening Fundamentals and Body Temple Blueprint. So if any of that resonates, you can find them in the show notes below. Thank you so much for being here, onward and upward in love and light, as we journey home to the heart of truth. See you in the next one. Thank you for tuning in to the Heart of Truth podcast with your host, Amanda Erin Kelly. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a rating or review on your favorite platform. And if you'd like to go deeper, grab your copy of my book, Let There Be Light, and join us inside the free community in Illumina Wisdom School, where you can access free resources to jumpstart your journey, such as a higher self activation and the Body Temple Blueprint Masterclass, as well as explore the plethora of resources, including Awakening Fundamentals and Luminary, my signature path to wholeness and mastery, to help you become your own healer and sovereign authority. You can access everything at thisartcalledlife.com or find the links down in the show notes below. Until next time, onward and upward in love and light as we journey home to the heart of truth.